Minister, don't we?
Just FYI, we've received quite a number of amendments to Clause 2, like about 4 minutes ago. So if you could keep the debate on this one going for a bit so we can update the group sheet.
Yeah, cool. Can the Minister? You're our man in the chair?
I am the man
Yeah,
in the chair.
couple of. All right, we're
Well,
good.
anyway.
Yeah, we're good to go.
Indeed.
Members, the committee has resumed on the Resource Management Duration of Consents Amendment Bill. When we were last debating the bill before the dinner break, we'd completed the debate on Clause 1. We now come to Clause 2. Clause 2, this is the debate on the commencement of the bill. The question is that Clause 2 stand part. Arena Williams.
Thank you, Mr Chair, for the opportunity to take a call on the commencement date. There are a few amendments on the table that I'll invite the Minister to consider. I know he has not had them for long, given that we're in all stages urgency, but I welcome his feedback on those. The main contention here is that given it is Christmas time, we're missing key people in the process of royal assent. Would it not be more sensible for the Minister to amend this clause to include a power to set the date by order in council? That's something which is quite ordinary for this government to do. In fact, the resource management pieces of legislation that we have considered have had parts or the entire bill that have dates which are relatively flexible in them. Given that this is a bill that introduces transitional and savings provisions that have a time impact, would it not be more sensible to be able to have this debate and to then allow the executive to set a time that was later? Some of the amendments that I have proposed to the Minister set a date for the executive to consider an order in council date setting provision after a certain time, and then some of them provide for the executive to be able to set that date after a certain date, but to consider it at any time. Those are different. It is useful here that we are able to traverse with the Minister when he intends for this to come into effect, because as the Minister before him and the Chair noted, there are some of these provisions which have retrospective effect, and so to be able to give us the most flexibility here, it would be useful to then be able to have an order in council provision at the commencement date clause, but for also the Minister to then discuss, as this is his only chance to do so, we don't have a select committee stage to be able to ask these questions, discuss what the timing provisions that are on his mind are. If this was to come into effect tomorrow, would it have any material difference to it coming into effect at the end of January, say next year? That will be on the minds of some of the groups that are affected here. We also note that from the regulatory impact statement that we've been provided with today, we note that Māori groups have not been consulted about the implications of this bill, but instead the Minister intends to tell them about it, which is a bit different from consultation, but nevertheless, would it not be more sensible for the executive to have a power to set the date that these provisions would come into effect, to allow the Minister to do that, to inform the groups which he proposes to work with? It notes here that the Crown is generally obliged to consult on proposals affecting Māori interests, but to address this, the Minister intends to inform Māori groups about the proposal. If that is a mere sort of information sharing exercise, it should be short, but perhaps the Minister can give us a time frame that he would expect that he would be able to inform these Māori groups, be it by letter or by face-to-face meeting. Either one of those shouldn't take too long. I bet a number of people out there are keen to engage with him on this, and so surely it would be useful for the House to allow a number of weeks for that informing process to happen. Mind you, colleagues, we are in slightly unusual territory here where consultation like this would often take the government anywhere between 6 weeks and 6 months. That's not what we are proposing here in the time it might take to change the commencement date clause. We're simply saying that if consultation is not to occur, that's not what we would choose. We would choose to do the consultation that we think is an obligation of the government under Te Tio Waitangi. But if a government was so minded to skip that consultation requirement, then would it not be reasonable for the executive to have some flexibility to allow that informing process to happen in a way which was respectful of the rights and interests that are at play here, would also allow for officials to be able to gather the information about what consents are impacted. Officials have provided advice around the 35-year water consents being, about the length that you might have an extension, and more than that might impact very unfairly on Māori rights, and so it would allow them more time to actually work out what consents those were and to engage with the impacted hapu and iwi who those consents are within a catchment area that they are kaitiaki of, and that would allow the Minister to do this important work which officials have noted is already underway anyway.
The Honourable Chris Bishop.
Mr. Chair, it's a relatively simple question with a relatively simple answer. The Act or Bill comes into force the day after the Royal Assent. The Government's not proposing to change that for the reasons outlined in the first and second reading debate. The Government wants to provide certainty as quickly as possible. So the moment it's passed, well, as soon as we can get the Royal Assent done, we will, and it comes into effect the day after the Royal Assent.
Dr. Lawrence Zenan.
And thank you to the Minister for that response. I do support the member Alana Williams' amendment because I have exactly the same amendment as well, which is to consider rather than a specific date, but a date set by ordering council. Now I hear what the Minister is saying in terms of the first and second reading, but contrary to what the Minister said, based on what we have in terms of the Department disclosure statement, and the lack of any other form of information, this is anything but clear, and in terms of confidence, that would I would be curious to know exactly to whom is this confidence that the Minister is speaking or referring to is supposed to be, because it certainly isn't for the collective groups that the member Alana William has just stated. So I do think that it is important for the Minister to consider such amendments when we are looking at as we're going through the bill, because there are definitely a number of things in other areas that we'll speak to at the later sections on clarifications, not necessarily concerns, but clarifications that we're seeking from the Minister. But just on the date itself, in terms of the Act coming into force the day after Royal Assent, I do want to check with the Minister if other things have been considered. For example, was a date set by ordering council considered as a part of that? As we see a number of other things, including within the Resource Management Act itself, that a lot of the dates that are specified are not specified per se, but specified in the context of either by ordering council or certain discretions, or based on the kind of consent that is being applied for. Indeed, that's some of the things that we're seeing later on in both the Natural Environment Bill and also in terms of the Planning Bill. So with that in mind, I do want to check with the Minister before, and also just asking the Minister to consider the amendment again on how is this bill supposed to give confidence people when the fact that Department of Disclosure statement says that no consultation has done, and there's basically very, very little information has been related to this.
Honourable Rachel Brooklyn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my question about the commencement is just slightly related, I think, to that last contribution, and that is the relationship of this to those other bills that have not yet had any debate in this House and have not been sent to Select Committee. So I was wondering if the Minister would consider and he might want to comment, given that he's now in the chair, on the unusualness of the situation whereby there is a transitional provision coming for legislation that's not yet had a first reading, that's in a separate piece of legislation, and I mean, that just seems like an incredibly unusual thing to be doing. So I would be interested in the Minister's comment on how that works and how that sequencing of the bills, because it could be that the commencement comes into force, I don't know, the day after those other bills are reported back, or some other trigger that is actually related to those other bills. Because at the moment, this just seems like a random extension to consents for perhaps 2 years, and we'll get into the 2 years soon. But I'm wondering what other considerations have gone into that commencement, and also what the urgency is here. Now, the Minister said before in a speech or in a motion that, you know, we want to get on and do the RM reforming, but why is this urgent now? There was the comment made that, well, this will provide some relief for different consent holders. Why does it matter today that it's come in all stages urgency today and will commence as soon as it's royal assent? And there's no post-enactment review or anything like that. Those things don't make very much sense to me, and I look forward to the Minister's answer.
Honourable Chris Bishop.
I don't have a lot more to add to what has already been traversed. The government's laid out, I think, a pretty clear transition plan. As I said during the second reading debate, any transition to a new regime is going to be relatively complex. So there's a range of things in the Planning Bill and the Natural Environment Bill, which is not subject to this bill, but the member did ask about them. So the intention of this bill in the short term is to provide some immediate certainty for those people who are stuck in the current consenting framework. And some of my colleagues during the first and second reading debate have made mention of some of those difficult situations that people have found themselves in. So there's an immediate if this bill passes, there'll be an immediate 2-year extent transition while the bills work their way through the Select Committee, the Planning Bill and the Natural Environment Bill, and then those bills have a consent extension provision in there as well, which is essentially a 2-year extension beyond when the system turns on. And we don't know exactly when the system will turn on. We roughly estimate around 2029. That's certainly what we'll be aiming for, and there's a whole lot of work to do between the spatial plans and the regional combined plans and the natural direction underneath the new bill. So there's quite a lot of work to do in the next 3 years. And so it's a layered approach. You've got the bill that we're debating currently. You've got the consent extensions in the transitional phase of the Planning Bill and the Natural Environment Bill. And then some bits of it, and this is where it does get a little bit complicated, some bits of the new regime will turn on straight away. So things around proportionality, some of the procedural principles, for example, will turn on straight away. So people will be able to get the benefits of that straight away. So, I mean, it's complicated on one sense, but on the other hand, it's also not that complicated. Whereas this bill is actually, as I say, it's a simple bill. Members are interested as to whether or not the government will consider a change to the commencement date. The answer to that is no, for the reasons that I've said twice now, which is that we want immediate certainty. Ms Brooking asks around why now. Don't take this the wrong way, but why not? This is the day we've announced our RMA reforms, and clearly the RMA reforms have, even the anticipation and the lead up to them have made people say, well, hang on a minute, I'm in the consenting queue right now, what's going on? Am I going to get a consent? You know, my council's, buggerising around, I need some certainty, and, the intention is to do that, but also cognizant of the fact that we do need to move to a new system. So this is we're not leaving the RMA stuck in formaldehyde. That would be a very bad idea. We think we've created a better and new system, but we need to get to that system, but getting there is not an immediate thing. It's not like you just pass a new piece of legislation and then everything turns on straight away. That's not the reality. It wasn't the reality under the MBA, the previous government. It's not the reality under this government either. That will never be the reality. That would cause absolute chaos. So I think this is an elegant way through. Members are entitled to disagree, but that's the rationale for the government's actions.
Yeah, I don't intend to take up any more time than necessary. I would like to ask a clarification on the Minister's comments just now, particularly around those timeframes. So we heard earlier a real downplaying of what was at least in the press release about the timeframes, which says existing consent expiry dates will be extended to 2 years after the end of the transition period for the new system. And as I hear it, the Minister is confirming that's, you know, there's going to be various stages, but we're expecting roughly 2029. And then you're saying, so there could be a 2-year period after that to 2031. So why does it say based on current expectations, this means most consents will extend to 2031?
Oh, well,
Honourable Chris Bishop.
well it's just maths, right? So if we turn the system on in 2029, 2 years after 2029 is, last time I looked, 2031. So there's just maths.
Thank you. So why were you downplaying it previously when you're saying that it is actually 2031? So it's not just 2 years, it's actually 2031, which is 5 to 6 years.
No,
Honourable Chris Bishop.
Mr Speaker, or Mr Chair, this bill is 2 years, so it's December 27, okay? That's what this bill does. The planning bill and the natural environment bill, which we're not currently debating, we will next week, and you know, you'll get a chance to have a thrash next week on that too. Those bills, which we introduced today, but won't get their first reading until next week, that sets up quite an elaborate, quite complicated transition regime. Elements of that regime are things that the member has picked up on, which is the 2 years after the system turns on, which, as I say, we expect to be around 2029, but between now and 2029, there's a whole lot of things that have to happen. One, we've got to pass the bills, to start with, and there's going to be a whole select committee process. Two, there's 2 tranches of national direction to bring into effect. One's called National Policy Direction. The other layer is national standards or national instruments. Those will happen in 2 tranches. Now, we're not starting from a blank sheet of paper on that because some of the work we've done over the last 24 months in relation to national direction will port into the new system. So, for example, the National Policy Statement on Urban Development, National Policy Statement on Renewable Electricity Generation, which has been strengthened, picked up on some of the work of the last government, a new National Policy Statement on Infrastructure, National Environmental Standards on granny flats, for example, which you know, the government's been working on. There's a whole range of different things, papakainga as well. Those things will port into the new system, so that's got to happen. That's number 2. Number 3, there's plans that have got to be developed, new spatial plans, and then land use chapters as part of the combined regional plans. So a lot of work to be done there. Basically, once all that stuff has happened, which is, to be honest, quite a lot to do in 3 years, I think with a fair wind behind us we can do it, but it's quite a bit of work. Once that happens, the new system will essentially turn on. It's brought on by order in council, by government. You know, Aaron Williams was making a point before around how the government likes order in council. It's not that we like it, it's just that it's an effective device for turning systems on. Eh? No, I'm not doing that. And then it's 2 years after that. Now, look, is there a debate to be had about 2 years versus 1 year? Absolutely. There's a debate to be had around that. We'll send it to a select committee, have a look at it. But you've got to give people time for the new system to get in, right? So once the new system's in place with the plans and the national direction, there still needs to be a bit of time after that for people to transition into that new system. Now, is 2 years the right length of time? That's what the government's current proposition is. We can have a debate about that. Reasonable people can disagree around it. But that's actually nothing to do with this bill. This bill provides immediate certainty for people right now. So don't get confused by the 2031 thing. This bill just does a 2-year extension of things that are currently in the system to provide certainty before Christmas for those people and their consents.
Mr Chair, so taking that and noting everything that you've just said, which was my understanding, the implication of exactly what you're describing of that process is that the date is not 2027, the effective date is 2031. So you can point to the bill, sorry, Mr Chair, the Minister can point to the bill as much as he wants, and the previous Minister and the Chair was doing the same, oh, don't worry about the press release, when you're just saying the implications of your own process,
Press release is about-
the material impact is 2031.
No.
Now that should matter.
No, sorry.
No, it's fine.
Honourable Chris Bishop.
Yep.
But the press release is really clear. It's about the planning bill and the natural environment bill. The press release also says there will be urgent legislation. This bill, which does the 2-year consent extension, there's no secret about this. It's all in the public domain. This bill does not extend consents till 2031. It does not. It does not do that. It does not say that in this bill. It does it till December 2027. I know the members worked up about the other stuff, but to be honest, that bill is like next week, and we can have a debate about that then, and at Select Committee. This bill is a really simple, very short bill. That's all it is.
So is it the case then that the press release about the transition to the new system is completely wrong?
I've answered that question like 5 times.
Honourable Rachel Brooking.
Great.
Thank you. I've heard the Minister talk about the transitional provisions in the new system and the complexity of turning that system on, and that you'll have elements that are immediate and elements that come later, and that we will discuss that in Select Committee because that bill is going to go to a Select Committee. What I don't understand, and I haven't heard from the Minister apart from it being near Christmas, is why we have this bill in front of us now with the 2-year extension, and he's confirmed that it's a 2-year extension, and whether he expects that if something happens with the other set of legislation, whether the 2-year extension in this bill will have to be amended in the future. So are we expecting to come back to this bill, is my question there. And related to that, again, putting it, what justification is there for this coming through all stages urgency with no regulatory impact statement, and with the department disclosure assessment just saying no to everything, that there's really no analysis. The Minister, I think, referred to this in his second reading speech as well, that we don't know how many consents are affected. But so on the commencement clause, it's why this need for haste when we don't have the information. You could take we could, as a Parliament, take some time to work through what the consequences are, and whether or not then, if there is a good reason for doing an extension to some consents, if the right consents are covered, if 2 years is the right time frame given what's going to come in the other legislation, and whether or not there should be any risk assessments on the type of consents that are being affected.
Honourable Chris Bishop.
Madam Chair, in terms of the justification, I've answered that 3 or 4 times now. Member makes a good point around are we expected to come back? The answer is no, because once the Planning Bill and National Environment Bill pass at some point next year, they will take effect. They'll get royal assent. They'll come into effect, and then the new transition regime kicks in, and so this the RMA at that point will be repealed, and so this extent consent transition thing will fall away at that point. So the 31 or the December 2027 backstop, if you like, is essentially a belts and braces approach. But the intention is for the Parliament to pass the bills next year. That's certainly my aim. There's a chance that they won't, I suppose. Who knows what will happen, but that's certainly the aim. But this is a belts and braces approach to provide certainty, and there's literally all there is to it. It's not actually that complicated, to be honest.
Honourable Damien O'Connor.
Mr Chair, and one of the questions I have is the size of the problem here. And because we don't have a RIS, a regulatory impact statement, we're really kind of working in the dark a bit. Like, how big is this problem? And if the commencement date doesn't happen this year, as the Minister implies, if for some reason, and like to think I'm an optimist, but having been in government through a period of many interventions from left field or right field, some of them, the fact is that things can intervene, and so if this commencement date wasn't after the royal assent and it wasn't this year, it was pushed out, then could the Minister answer what's the size of the problem, how many consents would be affected, and in what particular sectors? Because I guess if the Minister says this is a transitional arrangement to allow his 2 pieces of legislation to roll through, then if it doesn't happen this year, if the royal assent doesn't happen in a smooth passage over the next week or so, then what will happen to who? That is, how many consents will be affected, how many people will be operating outside of the law, and whether that is significant if this was to perhaps commence at the end of January or some other period that the Governor-General gets to sign this off. So maybe the Minister can take a call and answer those things.
Anita Williams.
And thank the Minister for his helpful answer to my questions about the amendments, and take on board that he's not going to change the date. So just want to ask him, in light of his comments around providing certainty as his justification for not changing the commencement date, if it, it is important that the law should be certain, and really the question is, when does he expect royal assent to be given? My question to him was about, it is Christmas time. We have key people in the process of royal assent who must be involved. Are those people available should this bill pass 3 days hence, because we'll be continuing on with this committee stage until then? When does he expect royal assent to be given? Is it this side of Christmas? What certainty is there when royal assent isn't part of that? It's not a date. He could pick a date. He hasn't done that.
Chris Bishop.
Mr. Chair, I think we're into the realm of the absurd now. I have great respect for the Governor-General, but I do not pick her timetable, and so whenever the bill is past its 3rd reading, it will get sent at some point to Her Excellency, and I've no doubt she will sign on the dotted line. Well, it doesn't, who knows? Who knows? She runs her own diary. I don't. I have many powers, but I don't have that. So let's wait and see. The point is, it's the day after, whenever that happens. My expectation would be in the next week or so. We are, what are we, December 9. Christmas is 16 days away. You guys might clock off early, but certainly we will be working hard, as no doubt the GG will as well. In relation to Mr. O'Connor's question, how many, I answered this in the... What's that? Well, not all of us can live in the greatest city on planet Earth, Rachel. Some of us have to. Some of it, well. In relation to Mr. O'Connor's question, how many? It's a good question. I answered this in the 2nd reading debate. We don't know exactly how many, partly because the RMA is such a disaster, such a dog in terms of the digital systems. We don't actually know. We roughly estimate between 2,000 and 2,500 consents, but that's a back of the envelope number. So it's about that many.
Mr. Chair.
Tom Rutherford.
I move that debate on this question now close.
The question is that debate on this question now close. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party vote has been called for. Clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand.
15 votes opposed.
ACT New Zealand.
11 votes in favour.
New Zealand First.
Over.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes opposed.
Taku Te Ferris.
1 vote opposed.
Maremino Kapakingi.
1 vote opposed.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 55. The question is agreed to. The question is that Airena Williams tabled amendment to clause 2, replacing the day after royal assent with the 1st of January 2026 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Tauka Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Maramino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Arena Williams table amendment to clause 2 replacing the day after royal assent with 6th of February 2026 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
Toru te kauma whānga pōti whakai.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Tauka Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Maramino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that the Honourable Rachel Brookings table amendment to clause 2 replacing the day after royal assent with 1st of March 2026 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
Toru te kauma whānga pōti whakai.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Tauka Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Maramino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Honourable Rachel Brookings table amendment to clause 2 replacing the day after royal assent with the 1st of April 2026 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
Toru te kauma whānga pōti whakai.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Tauka Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Maramino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to clause 2 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
Toru te kauma whānga pōti whakai.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Tauka Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Maramino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. There are a number of amendments to Clause 2 from Arden and Williams that provide for the bill to commence on a day set by order in council after a specified period. Because they are very similar in nature, I will select 3 of them for the committee to consider. The question is that Arden and Williams table amendment to Clause 2, replacing the day after royal assent with a day set by order in council that is at least 6 weeks after royal assent be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Taku Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Māori Mino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Arden and Williams table amendment to Clause 2, replacing the day after royal assent with a day set by order in council that is at least 6 months after royal assent be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
Toru Te Kauma Whā Ngā Pōti Whakai.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Taku Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Māori Mino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Arden and Williams table amendment to Clause 2, replacing the day after royal assent with a set day by order in council that is after the 12th of December 2026 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Te Pāti
Taku Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Māori Mino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
May I call for a repeat vote?
Point of order, does it?
Yeah. We haven't announced the vote, so we can...
Yeah, you can just call for a point of order.
Te Pāti Māori, 4 votes in favour.
Sure. The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. Arden and Williams' remaining tabled amendments to Clause 2 are ruled out of order as same in substance as amendments that have already been put to the committee. The question is that Clause 2 stand part. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The ayes have it. Ayes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes opposed.
ACT New Zealand.
11 votes in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes opposed.
Taku Te Whereas.
1 vote opposed.
Māori Mino Kapakingi.
1 vote opposed.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 55. The question is not agreed to. Members, we now come to Clause 3. Clause 3, this is the debate on the Principal Act. The question is that Clause 3 stand part. Dr. Lawrence Zidan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Clause 3 is one of the more substantial parts of this bill because, again, although we've touched on some of the other bills that's being introduced in terms of the Natural Environment Bill, but also the Planning Bill, I think the idea that this bill amends the Resource Management Act is significant in lieu of a select committee stage and any advice from officials. because this particular clause allows us to ask the ministers maybe some broader questions in terms of the policy intent of this bill and the magnitude that it affects the Resource Management Act. So in terms of the remainder of this section, we do see that this is supposed to be limited to consent and duration of consent. But I guess my first question to the minister, I'm sure that my colleagues will have other questions on the implications that this will have to the broader understanding of Resource Management Act, is whether there are other aspects that were considered as also being amended as part of this bill, or whether this is the only part. That's the first question. The second part of this question would be, is then Section 23, in terms of the duration of consent, the only section within the Resource Management Act that the minister considered in terms of increasing the duration of consent? Or are there other clauses within the Resource Management Act that is also relevant to duration of consent that isn't captured as a part of this bill? So those are my first two questions. And I guess another question is, as we're looking at some of the sections that will be covered a little bit later, just even looking at the Resource Management Act, and of course I'm no expert when it comes to RMA, but it is interwoven and interlocking in terms of various subclauses within the entirety of that act. And I just, again, under urgency, considering we have not seen this bill, it hasn't gone to the select committee stage, I just want reassurance from ministers that all potential fishhooks within different subsections that are affected by the changes that are being made in this legislation to the Resource Management Act is also well captured within this piece of bill.
Honourable Chris Bishop.
This is the most narrow clause on the planet. It is about the Principal Act, and the purpose of these clauses is to indicate to the Parliament what the amendment bill is amending. This is the Resource Management Duration of Consents Amendment Bill, which is amending the Resource Management Act because we are dealing with resource management consents. So that's literally all the clause says. The clause says the Act is amending the Resource Management Act 1991 because it is. It doesn't affect any other Act, and the reason it doesn't affect any other Act is because the intention is not to amend any other Act. It deals with the RMA. That's literally all it is, and we don't need to spend any time considering whether or not we should amend any other Acts because the bill's purpose is in the name. It's an amendment to the Resource Management Act. It's not an omnibus bill. That's all it is. So the Principal Act in Clause 3 says it amends the RMA. It's that simple.
Honourable Rachel Brooking.
Look, I take the minister's point that this is about the Resource Management Act only, and it's not about the future bills that we're yet to debate, even though it's related. And I'd just like to get the minister's confirmation about that when, in some of the material I saw today, there was discussion around these various different transitional and extension provisions, and it read as if some of the changes were to those other pieces of legislation rather than this Principal Act. So, my point is, he can confirm that this bill is just about the Resource Management Act. The future legislation will repeal the RMA, and they will have their own transitional provisions, which will be separate.
Chris Bishop.
Yes, I can confirm that. This just deals with the RMA. We've traversed the 2 years and how long and all the rest of it. It's that simple. It's RMA. Planning bill will come into effect some point next year. It's a whole other bespoke regime which will pull over consents issued under the RMA into the new system, obviously. And the RMA will wither away on the vine back into the dustbin of history where many people wished it were until now. And I think it was later than August 2023, wasn't it? But anyway, I take your point. I know what you're referring to. And we'll finally do away with it, and the spirit of bipartisanship and Christmas bonhomie will break out across all the land. No, apparently not. Okay, well, God can only hope. One can only hope. The bills I've introduced it. It's on the floor of the House. Oh, you're talking about this one? Yeah, well, that's available now too. It's literally a 5-clause bill. It's a 5-clause bill. It's not that complicated. Yeah. Anyway, it just affects the RMA.
Mr. Chair. Dr. Lawrence Zinan.
Small follow-up question for the minister. I understand that this clause, it says amends the Resource Management Act, but I want to check with the minister. does it need amending in the first place? As in, is there, I don't know RMA myself, but I'm checking with the minister if there is any other regulator-making power that will have achieved the same goal and the outcomes as expected, as the minister wanted to do with this particular bill. I don't know. Is there any other regulator-making power that would have avoided a bill being introduced in the House in the first place and the urgency?
Just before I take another call, if I can ask members to focus on this very narrow clause. The Minister has addressed a number of the issues, probably not to the satisfaction of some members, but it is a narrow clause, and if I could ask members to focus on the narrowness of it and not to step outside of that, that would be very helpful. The Honourable Damian O'Connor.
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. And I would say I won't take unnecessary time, but I think it is important, given the absence of a select committee, to ask a few questions, because if you go further down in the bill, and it relates back to this clause, of course we're talking about resource consents relating to water. So the questions around the Act that should be amended, and the Minister's got in the bill here, of course, the Resource Management Act, my questions are, should we perhaps have, or did he consider looking at the Valuation Act? Because if this bill didn't go through, would that have affected the valuation of any of the land? And indeed, if that had been considered, perhaps it should have been in the RIS, but I know we don't have a RIS. So that's why I'm raising the question. The other one is the Local Government Act, because there may be implications through this because of the change to water, or actually the securing of the permits to continue, but given the different circumstances that the councils might find themselves in now in addressing these applications for resource consents, then maybe the Local Government Act should have been amended and should have been one of the principal acts referred to in Clause 3 alongside the Resource Management Act. So maybe the Minister can say, had he considered, or was there any advice, or would the RIS have included any reference to the effect on the valuation of the property of all sorts, the property that is being reconsented or the consents are being extended, and indeed, is there any impact on local government for the management of this, and was there a need to look at amendments to the Local Government Act?
Stuart Smith.
I move debate on this question now close.
The question is that debate on this question now close. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes opposed.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes opposed.
Taku Te Whereas.
1 vote opposed.
Maramino Kapakingi.
1 vote opposed.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 55. The ayes are 68, the noes are 55. The question is agreed to. The question is that Clause 3 stand part. Have I done that one?
Yep, it's just this one. Yep, that's just the question is it's restore pay. Yep, that's just.
The question is that Clause 3 stand part. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes opposed.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes opposed.
Taku Te Whereas.
1 vote opposed.
Maramino Kapakingi.
1 vote opposed.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 55. The question is agreed to. Members, we now come to Clause 4. Clause 4, this is the debate on the amendment to Section 123, duration of consent. The question is that Clause 4 stand part. The Honourable Rachel Brooking.
So this is really a clarification question and explanation, and the Minister can tell me if I'm correct or not about what this clause is doing. So 1, 2, 3, it's a good number, isn't it? The duration of consent at 1, it gives the different time frames for different types of consents and how long they can last for. So for example, at AA, the period for which a resource consent for an activity that meets the requirements of a wastewater environmental performance standard or a stormwater environmental performance standard is granted is 35 years. So what, and then at 2, it's despite anything in subsection 1, the period of an extent wastewater consent as defined in section 139B may be extended as specified in section 139C. Beautiful RMA amended drafting there. But what we're looking at here is, so those 1, 2, 3 stays, but then we've got this addition, despite anything in subsection 1, which is those different timeframes for the different types of consents, that the period of a resource consent to which section 123C applies is the period specified in that section. And then we will come to 123C in a minute because that is what is inserted by Clause 5. But so my question is really very simple, and it's just for the Minister to confirm and I guess give us some comfort that the only amendment really to 123 is what is then later described in Clause 5, which is the new section 123C inserted.
Honourable Chris Bishop.
Mr. My apologies.
Apology accepted.
It's been quite a long day. Yes, well, I understand we're going through till 10 o'clock, so yes, that is definitely true. Time marches on. It's an amazing thing. In relation, so I've got an answer which is basically this is a tidy up to ensure 123C is not limited by 123. Is to ensure that new section 123C, which is the member notes, is essentially the chunk of the bill, the operative part of the bill in Clause 5, takes precedence for affected consents. So it's just the drafting. It's complicated.
Dr. Ranzinan.
Yeah, I want to check something with the Minister and also ask the Minister to consider one of my amendments to this section. Now, the wording for this section, despite anything, the period to which consent to which section 123C applies is the period specified in that section. The use of the verb is makes it absolute. So you have to follow. However, if we're looking at the original section 123, and then we're looking at 1232, which is also an exception to subsection 1, in there it says despite anything in subsection 1, the period of an extended wastewater consent may be extended as specified in a different section. So my amendment paper replaces the word is to maybe, one hand, to be consistent with also what's in 1232. On the other hand, to allow for flexibility to the practicality of the extension to the duration of a consent, and allows for the flexibility that while what we see in Clause 5 is there, it is not absolute and doesn't have to, and is not mandated. So I just want to check with the Minister if the Minister would consider that. I do think that the consistency between subsection 2 and subsection 3, which is in this bill, is an important one.
Honourable Chris Bishop.
Mr. Chair, the short answer is no. The section is really clear, as I've just read out literally to the member's colleague, exactly what it does.
Anina Williams.
Mr. Chair, I also want to clarify the provisions that apply to 1232. Just in light of what the Minister said, that it stops 123C being read down from what exists in 1231 now, I just want to clarify for the Minister that 1231 is the section which sets out the standard durations for consents, but 1232, which this amends, is just about wastewater. Is the Minister suggesting that the provisions do or don't apply to the wastewater provisions set out at 1232? Because those are the provisions which have special rules that allow for ongoing wastewater consents to be extended under the special rules under section 139C? Or does this apply to everything that's set out in 1231, which is, you know, land use consents, coastal permits, like that's everything? Because then I would have some different questions about his amendments at his new section 5, which create the new 123C.
Mr. Chair. Graham Cullen.
I move that debate on this question now close.
Dr. Lawrence Zinan.
Small follow-up to the question I had to the Minister before. I understand what the Minister is saying, but again, what we don't know is if other alternatives have been considered. So when we're looking at this clause, what is the rationale? I get it, it's clear, I can read that, but what is the rationale of using an absolute is as opposed to a subjunctive may, as you see with subsection 2 of section 123, which has a similar provision? That's my main question to the Minister, because I don't mind if that is an active consideration by the Minister between the two variations, but I would like to know that that is a genuinely considered decision that was made, not simply because that would have been logical or whether not that, you know, this is just how it was drafted or drafted in haste. So it would be good to know from the Minister if this was an active intent to make it absolute.
Just hold a sec.
I'll just answer this.
Okay.
I don't have anything much more to add other than I'm not going to get into a debate tonight about the meaning of the word is. Okay, I'll just say that one for the record. Well, the member can yell into the void about the word is if he would like, but I'm not intending to entertain a debate about it. Clause 4 is relatively simple, which says, despite anything in subsection 1, the period of a resource consent to which 123C applies is this period specified in that section, and then new clause 5 inserts new section 123C, which goes through a schema of various different consents that are then extended for 2 years, and the members rightly noted the various different things about wastewater. We can have a debate about that in the next section, but this is just almost like a prefatory clause to get to the actual operative clause. That's all there is to it.
Mr. Chair. Catherine Wedd.
I move that debate on this question now close.
The question is that debate on this question now close. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand.
15 votes opposed.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes opposed.
Tāku Te Whereas.
1 vote opposed.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote opposed.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 55. The question is agreed to. The question is that Helen White's tabled amendment to clause 4 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct the party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Tāku Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Marimeno Kapakingi.
One vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. Honourable Rachel Brookings' table amendment to delete clause 4 is ruled out of order as being a direct negation of the question. Arlene Williams' table amendment to clause 4, section 123, bracket 3, inserting in future is ruled out of order as not being in the correct form of legislation. The Honourable Rachel Brookings' table amendment to clause 4, section 123, bracket 3, inserting in future and not in any way retrospectively is ruled out of order as not being in the correct form of legislation. The Honourable Rachel Brookings' table amendment to clause 4, section 123, bracket 3, inserting from the date of commencement is ruled out of order as not being in the correct form of legislation. Dr. Lawrence Zunan's table amendment to clause 4, section 123, bracket 3, replacing is with maybe is ruled out of order as not offering a serious alternative form of words. The question is that clause 4 stand part. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour. 34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand.
15 votes opposed.
ACT New Zealand.
11 votes in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes opposed.
Tākuta Ferris.
1 vote opposed.
Marimeno Kapakingi.
1 vote opposed.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 55. The question is agreed to. Members, we now come to Clause 5. Clause 5, this is the debate on the new section 213C, duration of certain current and continued consents. The question is that Clause 5 stand part. The Honourable Rachel Brooking.
And I do have a number of questions on this clause, it being the big one in the bill. But I will start at the start. Although other members may have questions that jump around a bit. But what I want to start with is at 1B, it says there that a resource consent that expired before the commencement date, but only if immediately before the commencement date the holder was eligible to operate under the consent in reliance on section 124 and the holder's application for a new consent had not been determined by the consent authority before the commencement date. So the questions about this clause are the retrospective element that comes here and how that then relates to the 2 years that the Minister has been talking about. Because if a resource consents are binary, you either have a resource consent or you don't have a resource consent. So if a resource consent has expired, that means you don't have a resource consent. Yet, what this provision seems to be doing is saying, despite the fact that your resource consent has expired and you don't have a resource consent, before the commencement date, we're still going to give you an extension. And so I'm wondering if the Minister can comment on that and how it will work. And the justification for it as well, noting that there are 2 requirements. There is an if and then there is a 1 and a 2 with an and in between. So the first one is that they were eligible to operate under the consent in reliance on section 124 and that consent hadn't been determined. So if they were immediately before the commencement date eligible to operate under the consent in reliance on section 124, do they not then still have a consent? And why is it referred to as expired in B? If the Minister could take us through that, that would be very useful. And also if he can comment on whether or not there is supposed to be any retrospective element of this legislation.
Honourable Chris Bishop.
I mean, I think people could have a debate about if it's retrospective or not. And even if it is, that's not the world's worst thing in the world. It's retrospective legislation that confers a benefit is not constitutionally objectionable. Yeah, well, I know your views on that. You know, good lobbying, strong lobbying from Waiheke Island. Reasonable people can have a disagreement around whether or not. I mean, constitutional objection is when there's a penalty imposed retrospectively, which is obviously abhorrent. I think it's relatively straightforward, which is consents that have expired before the commencement date are extended if, before the commencement date, the holder of the consent had a consent or eligible to operate under the consent in reliance on section 124, which the member knows is when consents have expired, but the reconsent has not yet been processed, so they can carry on. The holder's application for a new consent had not been determined by the consent authority, it's an and, by the consent authority for the next date. So the bill reinstates and extends expired consents where an application for a replacement consent has been made but not yet determined. This doesn't impose any obligations on consent holders, simply gives certainty to them during transition to the new resource management system. So is it retrospective? I mean, it's forward-looking in the sense that it extends things by a couple of years. It helps people out who are in the midst of a reconsenting battle, or at least process. Some people would say that's retrospective. I probably wouldn't, but actually it's kind of neither here nor there, to be honest.
Honourable Rachel Brooking.
It's relevant because this legislation, this short bill, will give people entitlements that they don't otherwise have, and if they come to rely on it, they're going to want to know what it means, and so the Hansard on this with no select committee process is very important. So has the consent expired is one question. Because if they're relying on section 124, sorry, I spilt my water on before, I think it's in front of me over there. If they are relying on 124, is it not expired? Because 124 is the exercise of resource consent while applying for a new consent. So it applies when a resource consent is due to expire. So it's not that it's expired, it's that it's due to expire, and the holder of the consent applies for a new consent for the same activity, and the application is made to the appropriate consent authority. And this is very important to my question about whether or not it is expired. D is the application is made at least 6 months before the expiry of the existing consent. So the point is, if you are in the section 124 process, your consent hasn't expired. Like it can't have expired because once you're in, you're in. Yet the words in this bill are a resource consent that expired before the commencement date. And then it's like, well, immediately before you're in that section 124 process, but it's only eligible to operate, but presumably you're not eligible unless you've done all those requirements that I just read out, and that the holder's application for a new consent has not been determined. So it is in fact all that is meant here is that if you are already in that 124 process, so you've done it 6 months before and you've met those other criteria, then your consent won't expire whilst you're in that process? Or is it supposed to mean something else on top of what happens in section 124, and it is supposed to be retrospective to something that has expired in that binary sense, or is it that it's already in the 124 process? I think your words are going to be important here, Minister.
Well, Honourable Chris Bishop.
Well, respectfully, the courts ignore Hansard. Whether or not they should or not is a slightly different matter, but the courts focus on what the words say in the statute, and to be honest, that's given the nonsense talked in this place, that's probably for the better. Having said that, I'm prepared to mount a strong defence of, words mattering, or words being important, as Mr. Peters would say. And I do intend to lay down a marker for how the government intends things to work in the new system in the first reading, but that's all for another day. Whether or not the courts pay any attention is a different issue. I think to actually address the point, I think it's important to read 1A and B together, right? So 1A says a resource consent that's current on the commencement date of this bill, but due to expire before the close is extended, right? And B says if you've got a resource consent that's expired before the commencement date, that's also extended, but only if you're in the 124 process. It's expired. You've got to read it in the light of the next phrase, which is expired before the commencement date. If you're in the 124 process, then that gets extended too. So it's a belts and braces approach. It's either expired or it hasn't. The point is, as long as you're in the process or your consent is going to expire during that time frame before the commencement date, you get an extension. So it's a belts and braces approach, but 1A and B should be read together.
Honourable Rachel Brookie.
Thank you, that is helpful. So to summarise there, the point is it's not supposed to be a retrospective bonus for expired consents that aren't actively in that section 124 process. And then my next question on this aspect is, if a resource consent is due to expire before 2027, and we've talked about, and we'll talk about this once we get to 3, about this 2-year extension, does it matter where that expiry date is of the consent in relation to the extension? So can you ever go beyond 2 years is my question. And will some be a lot shorter than 2 years? So if you had a consent that was due to expire on the 30th of December 2027, then what this bill does, well, this is my question, does this bill give you then a 1-day extension?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you, that's useful.
Great benefit.
Great benefit. Well, and then I might jump around then a bit and go down to 7.
Sure.
And that is that a consent authority must no later than 6 months update a resource consent to which the section applies to record its new expiry date, and if applicable, continue to process and determine the application for the new consent unless it is withdrawn. So my question here is around the consultation that has happened with those consent authorities, and presumably most of the consents in question here are going to be ones with unitary councils, regional councils or unitaries, because they're going to relate to water or air and discharges. Most of them won't be land use consents. So a number of questions in this is, has there been any consultation with councils? What is the requirement on the councils going to be in terms of this administrative task? And has he thought of any sort of cost-benefit analysis whereby a consent that is due to expire on the 1st of December 2027, getting a 1-day extension, how much resource is going to be required to meet the requirements of clause 7? Apologies. And then the next question is, if he could tell us about the consents that he expects, and there'll be further questions on this, particularly in relation to subsection 10, but what are the types of consents that he is expecting will benefit from this extension, given that very few land use consents have expiry dates, unless they're going to lapse? And what analysis has there been into that, and what sorts of different councils are going to be burdened with these additional administrative tasks?
Honourable Chris Bishop.
Well,
I don't know about administrative tasks. I mean, this is reducing the burden on councils massively, or at least for a while, because they don't have to process consents anymore. The Parliament's,
They all end on the 30th of
Parliament's
December.
legislating their extension, so they don't have to. There's a whole bunch. This will reduce the burden on councils, and there's any doubt about that. In terms of the types of consents, there'll be a range, as the member, I think, adverts to herself in her remarks. In terms of consultation with councils, there hasn't been any. This has been done quickly, as the member knows, so we haven't engaged with councils on it. But I don't think anything particularly turns on that. To be honest, the 30th December 2027 point. I mean, yes, there'll be one or two consents which will be in the slightly odd situation of getting a one-day extension, but there'll be a bunch that expire quite soon. That will no longer have to go through that process. So that is the nature of time. This is what it is.
Dr. Lorenzino.
The nature of time. Hands up.
I want to start by addressing quite a big concern in the department disclosure statement, and that is on some of the Te Tiriti Waitangi and also external obligations. As it mentioned in the DDS, there are broader implications in terms of both post-settlement government entities, Ngā Hapua, Ngāti Porou, groups that have settled their historical treaty claims, Potao, Te Taikaha. They're all being mentioned in here, but I guess the concern is over here. It says that extending consent without engaging Māori raises treaty implications, as the Crown is generally obliged to consult on proposals affecting Māori interest. But instead of consulting, it just says that the minister will inform, which is different from consult. On top of that is the minister intends to inform, i.e. it hasn't happened yet. And in the next page it says that post-settlement government entities, Ngā Hapua or Ngāti Porou, Potao, Te Taikaha, are being informed. Is that being informed as we speak, as this bill is going through? I do find that of a concern. I'm hoping that it's a concern for the minister as well, in terms of our general treaty obligations with our treaty partner, where not only have they not been consulted, they haven't even been informed yet, according to the DDS, on what has been happening here. So I just want to check with the minister, have they been informed? And if they have, is the minister intending on consulting with them at any stage on the policy proposal of this particular legislation? The second thing I want to address is the date. Now, this is the section that I held back from asking the minister in the earlier section, particularly on the commencement date. But the date that is being used here, on the 31st of December 2027, where did that date come from? And what other considerations did the minister, in consultation with officials, etc., have for that date? Now, understanding that we have talked about the fact that this bill is a transitional measure for the other two bills, but if we're going through the other two bills, both of the other two bills refers to commencement the day after royal assent. I'm assuming the minister has indicated the bill will be passed next year, in which case it will be the day after, at some point it passes next year. In which case, why does the consent need to be extended by 2 years and not, for example, by a year, up until the 31st of December 2026, if the other two bills are going to be in effect? So those are my two questions to start off with on our treaty obligations and also the arbitrariness of the date.
Madam Chair, to deal with the second question first, which I think has been well canvassed, to be honest, for quite a degree of time. It's a belts and braces approach. The intention of the government is to legislate for the Planning Bill and the Natural Environment Act bill next year, at which point the new consenting regime will kick in, and this bill act, and the RMA itself will wither away, but it just gives a bit of extra flex just in case. So that I think deals with that. We've well canvassed that issue. People are entitled to disagree. In relation to the member's point around consultation, I wrote as Minister of RMA Reform to PSGEs and TTK and a range of other groups on Friday. So they've had not extensive consultation or engagement, but well, you can do the math. I know you're not very good at it, but you can figure it out. In relation to they were emailed. We do have emails. I would note, because I suspect members will raise this anyway because it's relevant to the point the member's making, I would note at 123C3 the limitation of the extension of water-related consents to a maximum of 35 years. So you can't go beyond the 35 years for water-related consents, as I think some members will know. This was the maximum consent duration for fresh water agreed to by the Crown when the Crown settled the litigation in the Lands case, New Zealand Maori Council and Attorney General, famous case back in 1987. So the bill aligns with that case and aligns with that long settled matter of policy across successive governments. So you can't go beyond a 35-year extension for water-related consents. And 123C4 introduces a specific cut-off for certain historic water consents that were grandfathered into the RMA to avoid unintended long extensions, in other words, past the 35 years mark. So it's the same point. So both those two things have been written in specifically, and that's been done with post-settlement government entities and other Maori groups in mind.
Lan Farm. Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me this call to examine what I believe is quite a substantial aspect of the bill. So this is particularly about the implications for council, and this clause, makes it really clear across the many parts of it that there will be, like the Minister has said multiple times, less work for councils. And so with the very, very limited analysis that we have in the departmental disclosure statement, and this is on page 5, it's talking about the potential costs and benefits, and they make it really clear that they haven't been able to undertake a broad analysis on those. But my question is specifically then, it basically sums it up that, this is a continuation of business as usual, and with respect to particularly the potential for any group or persons to suffer a substantial unavoidable loss of income or wealth, it says that this is not expected. And what my question is what are the actual implications for council staff? Because we know that a lot of council functions are user pays, and we also know that in the system ahead of us, councils will be under increasing resource strain because they will be undertaking the implementation of the Resource Management Acts the replacement bills that will come into effect. What is expected to happen to council staff jobs, particularly in the consent and compliance space, with the inaction of this? Now, the Minister, I think in his earlier comments sort of mentioned, they're expecting like a few thousand. I'd like clarification of what the number was that the Minister says about how many consents they're actually, if they have any take on the magnitude of this, because if it is a great amount, then it could actually have significant impacts on those council staff and result in potential job losses, presumably, for them. And so I'd really like to hear whether that has been considered and to what magnitude.
Honourable Chris Bishop.
Yeah, Madam Chair, there's expected to be a light implementation requirement. Councils just simply have to update their records. Parliament is essentially legislating extensions for these consents. Councils have to update their records. That's not burdensome. probably takes longer than 5 minutes because we don't have, e-plans and digital records, but shouldn't, theoretically take that much longer. In relation to the member's other question around how many consents, we've canvassed this at least 2 or 3 times now. We don't know exactly, but we think roughly between 2,000 to maybe 2,500, about that many.
Honourable Rachel Brooking.
And thank you to the Minister for taking us through some of the logic in 3 and 4. And I think I was going to ask about 4 and the bit right at the end of 4, which is granted under this Act, but it does seem clear that this is the Resource Management Act that applies to. Looking at 5 then, is that any conditions applying to a resource consent before it expired continue to apply unless a change to a condition is required as a consequence of extending the consent under this section. Can the Minister explain what type of change to a condition might be required as a consequence of extending the consent under this section? Is he thinking it's just about timing, input, temporal factors, or are there other factors as well? So for instance, if you had a consent that was trying to reduce say nitrates into the river by a certain time and you got it extended, do you think there'd be some circumstance where you would, I'm just going to ask you another question too. So thank you. Oh, sorry, microphone. Thank you for anticipating of you answering that one, but also related to this point is whether or not those conditions on that consent that are getting the 2-year extension, can they be reviewed? Do the normal review provisions apply? And I'm seeing it obvious, I'll let you answer.
Chris Bishop.
I'm advised it's really just to make clear that consent conditions, it doesn't change any consent conditions. So it's just for clarity. It's to make clear. If you're talking about 123C5, consent conditions continue to apply, and yes, there can be reviews. So it is just a time frame extension for a couple of years. Everything else carries on.
Madam Chair, are there any examples though, and because it does say unless a change to a condition is required as a consequence of extending that consent under the section, has he got any examples of what that might apply to, other than a temporal requirement in a consent condition?
Lan Farm, you can ask your question in the meantime.
Mine is an extension of just that,
okay,
because it implies that there is some sort of assessment or review, whereas this is talking about blanket extensions given set criteria. So I'm really keen to hear the Minister expand specifically on that.
Honourable Damien O'Connor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just look at something's occurred to me, because I know that members of the government, the coalition government, have indicated, and I haven't seen the legislation, my colleagues may have read through it, in the 2 substantive pieces of legislation that we're about to see. The implication is that if there's any imposition on property rights, then there'll be some access to compensation. So my question in relation to this is that if we indeed are having an extension, and it's for 2 years, on consents that were processed and approved, fees paid for, and there may have been some payment for that right, so it's a property right, we accept that, then the extension of that automatically may incur a liability, that is, that someone gets a free property right. And the Minister said that it's a certainty. So if we're going to see the principles of compensation as applied in the legislation that we're about to see, then should these people who have applied for and have probably paid some money to get consent extended, if it's automatic, then is there going to be a fee automatically paid for the extension of a property right?
Honourable Chris Bishop.
The answer is no. Although good question. And also, there'll be no refunds for people that are in the midst of consent processing either. So this is just Parliament taking the problem away for everyone. So no compensation and no refunds.
Honourable Damien O'Connor.
Madam Speaker, I mean, property rights accrue to not just a private landowner. Yeah. Property rights accrue to taxpayers, to the Crown, to iwi, and they may be, or we may be, foregoing property rights. And so what about us getting compensation? To admit, and the Minister chortles away there, but I'd suggest to him that very soon after the implementation of his new RMA regime, the country will be tied up in huge litigation over whose property rights are paramount and who should be paid compensation. Because if we are to establish property rights in the hands of private individuals, then we must assess property rights across the collective, across the Crown, across iwi. Yeah. And where's that going to end up? And the minister smiles, and I'm glad that I've kind of tickled his fancy, because I really am. Because if he can't see this coming down the track, then he should wake up. It's an inevitable outcome of what he will be setting up. But for this piece of legislation here, the automatic rollover. Did he, and he's indicated no, well, why not consider compensation to those who are passing on the additional property rights as a way of a reasonable commercial deal?
Madam Chair, I refer the member to section 122 of the RMA. Consents are not a property right, although sometimes people think they should be. I think the reason I was sort of chortling away and smiling is that, the member's right, he makes good points around, and we are going to have a debate over the next, in the next little while, around the appropriate role of government in regulating for the national good and the public good in the commons and on private property. And, we live in a mixed economy, and the government's view is that we have got the balance wrong when it comes to the ability of councils and government to impose significant restrictions on private property for the public good, and that there needs to be a greater delineation between the public and the private realms. Now, that's quite a big debate. It actually happened when the RMA 1991 was passed, and we're going to have the same debate again. I am not someone who thinks, for example, that you can't have zoning. There's a school of thought in the hardcore anarcho-libertarian world which suggests that zoning is a violation of property. Sort of by definition, it's true. I live in a residential zone. I can't set up an industrial effluent discharge factory. That's outrageous. On one level, and that's clearly. There needs to be zoning. There's a debate around the extent of it and the rules and how clear it is, and the consistency, and we're going to make some changes in that direction. But zoning, is not offensive as a concept. Actually, it's a legitimate planning role in order to separate out incompatible land uses so that you don't rely on the tort of nuisance, which would be completely inefficient from a property rights point of view. It's got its place, but it would be inefficient. So that's partly why we have planning. So I'm not an extremist like that. But on the other hand, when councils or governments can turn around and say, hey, by the way, you own that piece of land, 90% of it's now a significant natural area such that you can't do anything with that land, that has an impact on your land. If I own a house and the government turns around or the council turns around and says, we've decided that it's a heritage house and I can't add a second story or subdivide or paint it a different colour, that has an impact. And I think most people reasonably understand that, and the debate is the debate in the middle rather than on the extremes. The debate in the middle is around what's the appropriate kind of regulatory response to that. We're proposing a series of changes that force harder decisions around those those choices, and I'm happy to have a debate about it, and no doubt we will. It's not the focus of this, but anyway, I just thought I'd take that opportunity to, lay it out a bit. But looking forward to the actual debate in due course.
Is this a subsequent question?
It is a subsequent question, absolutely, because
related to here or the
yes,
or
it
the
does go to this
legislation?
because, Madam Chair, it goes to the heart of the transfer, the automatic transfer of rights which you're talking about, because these consents are being extended. These consents are being extended with no compensation, the Minister has said, and the question is a legitimate one for us, given there's no select committee process. In a select committee, I'm sure this will be kicked around. There's no select committee process. The only opportunity we have to quiz the Minister is, and it's a legitimate one, are there precedents being set here? That is, that the compensation is only going to be one way under the RMA. And I think that is totally unjust. The Minister refers to, property rights of the commons versus private, accept that, and we've started to touch on what is a critical issue. And the Minister may talk about the middle, but his coalition partner in ACT talks about the extreme. That is, that private property rights trump everything else. Trump being the right word. And I am concerned that what we're doing here, by automatically extending a consent, and people say, oh, it's just to offer certainty, sets the precedent for free property right extension for private property owners with no payment, compensation, call it what you like, for the commons or for the taxpayer. So that's why I asked the Minister, because while I respect his view that we're trying to kind of work in the middle, all the rhetoric that we hear around the RMA reforms is at the extreme end of property rights upholding them. And the Minister refers to one of a house. There are always restrictions on what you can do in and out and around your house. Always. There will be, we hope, because to have completely laissez-faire and a private property owner able to do whatever he or she or they want is outrageous. Because we live in a community, we live in a society, and we have to have some guidelines, and the Minister accepts that. So the question here is, are we setting a precedent here that automatically extends property rights for private landowners, that is the person who's got a consent, but doesn't require any payment or compensation or consideration for that? And I'm no lawyer, but I know that deep in the hearts of law and law journals and learnings, there are some key principles there. So I'll leave that question with the Minister, and maybe he'd like to come back and answer it.
I'm going to call Lan Farm. We're seriously running out of clauses on this part, but before, when the Minister was taking advice, Lan Farm, you asked a question about assessment or review, and I don't know that we actually got to the point where the Minister heard it and was able to answer. So if you want to perhaps repeat that question as part of what you're going to ask.
Sure.
I think you were asking, was there going to be an assessment or review while this process was happening?
Yeah, was there assessment? I'm just trying to find the clause that I followed up Rachel Brooking on.
Fine, yeah.
Yes, it is 5.
The Minister's actually said he can deal with it. So.
Well, thank you. I mean, this point was raised by Ms Farm and also Rachel Brooking. I'm advised that it's a belts and braces approach, just to make sure that conditions applying to a resource consent continue before it expired, and they continue to apply unless there's a change required as a consequence of extending the resource consent. We don't know if that will be the case necessarily. I think the member asked for examples. We don't know of any examples, but it's just a belts and braces to say that if there needs to be a change in the conditions as a result of the 2-year extension, frankly, I think it's unlikely. But if there was, there's the ability for that to happen, and that's all there is to it, really.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Aruna
Madam
Williams,
Chair.
you've been taking a call for a little while, so we'll take one from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have some specific questions for the Minister around 123CB, and I was waiting for the opportunity to ask him because he's specifically about Auckland and different subject matter to what my colleagues have dealt with. I flagged for the Minister in the earlier stages, I think it was the Clause 1 debate, that I'd be asking about PC 78 and PC 120. So I'll turn to that now. The question I have for the Minister is, he's helpfully explained the word expired here. So I want to clarify with him what he means about consents which had an operative effect before PC 120 came into effect, which followed his amendments to the RMA previously passed in this House in this year. Auckland Council responded to that by introducing PC 120 from the 3rd of November 2025. It will help, Madam Chair, if you'll allow me to set out an example for the Minister here. So what I'm asking about is those developers, you know, in many cases we're talking about small developers who were building 3-storey townhouses and we're relying on the MDRS because the underlying zone in Auckland allowed for two-storey high developments. They had a resource consent in those cases which didn't cover permitted activities because that was permitted by the MDRS, but they would have had consents for other things like the civil works. And then, you know, they would have either had a business building consent or been in the process of having a building consent. When the MDRS became inoperative and when PC 120 then applied from the 3rd of November, those developers were effectively in the situation where they no longer had a consent that was, well, they no longer were able to develop their land. So I'm asking him very straight whether 123C 1B fixes the problem for those developers. Given that he's used the word expired, you have to read that up. He might improve the situation by talking about resource consents that were operative before the commencement date. And that would be a simple change that would make sure that the situation that I'm talking about would clean that up. There's a real need here for natural justice, especially because in that situation there were developers who were doing everything right and progressing their developments under the rules as they applied then. And we're hearing policy intentions from political parties of both colours that the intention was to continue with intensification. And so those 3-storey townhouses were not only encouraged at the time they were developing them, but were also something that they probably should have been able to rely on being allowed for in the future. And that is in fact the case with PC 120, but they can't rely on PC 120. So I think the Minister gets the gist. I have some other questions about the natural justice questions.
Yes, I'm very familiar with that issue, and it's not for me to give legal advice. It's not the intention to help. That's not the purpose of this bill. It's not the intention of the section the member refers to assist. I am familiar with the examples plural that the member raises, and there is. It'd be fair to say there is dialogue between the government and the council. Well, it's slightly more complicated than that because these were consents that were largely permitted activity standards. I'm getting away from the bill now, but they had permitted activity standards, which, because of the immediate withdrawal of PC 78 and the replacement by PC 120, they no longer have any form of consent. So the 124 carryover doesn't apply. So they sort of fall within this lacuna, which is frankly pretty frustrating for everyone. And I think the member's nodding, and that there is, I could talk to her offline about it, but there is dialogue between the council and the government in relation to that issue, but it's not the intention of this section to help that particular situation.
Grant McCallum.
I move the debate on this question now close.
I'm going to take a call from Tangi Utikere, but I am looking for new clauses now because I think we've pretty much canvassed the main part of this, and there's very little left in this piece. Tangi Utikere.
Kia ora, thank you, Madam Chair.
A point of order, Dr. Lawrence Shunan.
seek your guidance on something, and this is something I've been observing. And Madam Chair, you were the chair that was in the seat at that stage. When we were going through the committee stage for Company Address Information Amendment Bill, which is a member's bill by the Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell, that was a bill that went through select committee stage and is a member's bill, and it was 4 pages long. And in those processes, the chair has allowed for a 4-hour debate on those bills.
That's not the way.
And I just want to seek them.
I think where you're conflating the two issues is that that was a member's bill, and you will have observed in your time in the House, because you're very perceptive, that members' bills' days run quite differently. Because of the dynamics of the House and the numbers on each side of the House, it almost goes in reverse. In this situation, what I'm actually wanting to do is to get the best out of each clause. It's a very specific bill that's setting a time frame. The questions have been relevant, but I think we're getting to the end of new questions. Tangi Utikere.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's a pleasure to put some questions to the Minister on what is the most significant part of this bill. Earlier in a contribution, the Minister talked about how the courts would perhaps not be looking at Hansard, but would be more interested in what's actually contained in the bill. And so there are a couple of questions around this. The first one for me is whether or not the Minister has looked at a shorter period of time. So, for example, what's proposed currently is that it would be a 2-year period through to the 31 December, but the Minister hasn't indicated in committee as to why a shorter period of time perhaps would not be more appropriate. But my question...
I believe that may have been, I wasn't in the chair, but I believe that may have been conversed during the commencement section.
The commencement section, yes. Okay, thank you. But not related to, it might have been in the commencement section, but not in relation to this particular clause.
But it has been discussed.
Which the clause 5 outlines the particular dates that things come into effect. The question I have for the Minister is, it's curious when one looks at subclause 1A, the language that is used throughout this clause when it comes to date is actually around before the close of 31 December 2027. And then further down, that's repeated, I think, at least on 2 other occasions, and then there is expires on the close of 1 October 2026. The curious nature of that, of course, is often when we talk about the close of something, it could be the close of business, or is it, one assumes that it is midnight here. Why does it not just say the 1st of January 2028? You know, I mean, it effectively is the same aspect, right? I mean, consistency with other legislation in terms of when a particular date comes into effect. That is my first question. My other question is around Clause 8, and this relies on the issues that have been raised previously in contributions, and certainly in second reading and first reading, around the lack of information that is available. The Minister has talked about thousands of consents being impacted in this particular space. But when we look at Clause 8, this is talking about the extant wastewater consents which relate to constructing or operating a wastewater network, so there are not huge numbers of those. But when that's broken down, this is effectively a caveat that doesn't apply. It's an exemption, basically, but it applies in 2 particular quarters or 2 areas. The first is 139C and the second one is 139D. The D one is about the Minister making an extension. My question for the Minister is, does he have any information on the numbers of consents that fall into this particular provision? So it's not about, there are thousands out there. I accept the Minister has said that. We don't have the information specifically in front of us. But when we are talking about effectively carving out the applicability to certain types of consents when it comes to extant wastewater consents that have already been extended either by application or indeed by the Minister, I think it is still important to understand how many we are talking about in that particular space.
Honourable Chris Bishop.
Good questions from the member. In relation to 123C4, as I dealt, I talked to Ms Brooking around this. It introduces a specific cut-off for certain historic water consents that were grandfathered in to the RMA, hence the 1 October 2026 timeframe. Clause 8 is important. So wastewater consents were extended to allow for new wastewater standards, which have now been introduced. They are extended beyond the 31st of December 2027 to August 2028, so I think the member knows. So the purpose of Clause 8 is to avoid overriding that, so we're not shortening their extension via this bill. So just for clarity, the wastewater consents have already been extended by I think from memory it's the Local Government Water Services Repeals and Amendments Act 2025. So that's already happened through to August 2028, and everyone's, well, there seems to be broad agreement that that's okay. That's the law anyway. And so, well, that is what it is. And so the purpose of 123C8 is to avoid overriding recently legislated arrangements for wastewater network consents. So the bill excludes wastewater consents from the general consent transition provisions. So for maximum clarity, wastewater, August 2028, everything else, 2 years through to December 2027, but it's to avoid overriding that.
Madam Chair.
Todd Stevenson.
I move the debate on this question now closed.
The question is that debate on this question now closed. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party votes being called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand. Opposed. 15 votes opposed. Act New Zealand.
11 votes in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 votes in favour.
Te Pāti Māori. 4 votes opposed. Taku Te Wheres. 1 vote opposed. Maria Meno Kapakingi. 1 vote opposed.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 55. The question is agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to Clause 5, Section 123C, replacing 31 December 2027 with 31 December 2026 in all instances be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party votes being called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand. 15 votes in favour. Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori. 4 votes in favour. Taku Te Wheres. 1 vote in favour. Maria Meno Kapakingi. 1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. Arana Williams' tabled amendment to Clause 5, Section 123C, replacing 31 December 2027 with 1 December 2026 at 5 p.m. in all instances is ruled out of order as not being in the correct form of legislation. The question is that Maria Meno Kapakingi's tabled amendment to Clause 5, Section 123C, inserting new subsection 1A be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party votes called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand. 15 votes in favour. Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori. 4 votes in favour. Taku Te Wheres. 1 vote in favour. Maria Meno Kapakingi. 1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question's not agreed. The question is that Maria Meno Kapakingi's tabled amendment to Clause 5, Section 123C, replacing subsection 2 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote's been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand. 15 votes in favour. Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori. 4 votes in favour. Taku Te Ferris. 1 vote in favour. Maria Menu Kapakingi. 1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. Maria Menu Kapakingi's tabled amendment to Clause 5, Section 123C2, amending paragraph A, is ruled out of order as not being in the correct form of legislation. The question is that Land Farm's tabled amendment to Clause 5, Section 123C, inserting new subsection 2A, be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote's been called, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand. 15 votes in favour. Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori. 4 votes in favour. Taku Te Ferris. 1 vote in favour. Maria Menu Kapakingi. 1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Land Farm's tabled amendment to Clause 5, deleting Section 123C3, be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Party vote called, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand. 15 votes in favour. Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori. 4 votes in favour. Taku Te Ferris. 1 vote in favour. Maria Menu Kapakingi. 1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aruna Williams's tabled amendment to Clause 5, Section 123C3A, be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Party vote called, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand. 15 votes in favour. At New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori. 4 votes in favour. Taku Te Ferris. 1 vote in favour. Maria Menu Kapakingi. 1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Honourable Rachel Brookings' tabled amendment to Clause 5, Section 123C3A, be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote is called. Pray, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand. 15 votes in favour. Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori. 4 votes in favour. Taku Te Ferris. 1 vote in favour. Maria Menu Kapakingi. 1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Honourable Rachel Brookings' tabled amendment to Clause 5, Section 123C3B, to replace 35 with 30 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Party vote called, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand. 15 votes in favour. Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Maori. 4 votes in favour. Taku Te Ferris. 1 vote in favour. Maria Manu Kapakini. 1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to clause 5, section 123C3B, to replace 35 years with 20 years be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Party vote has been called for. Please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand. 15 votes in favour. Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori. 4 votes in favour. Taku Te Ferris. 1 vote in favour. Maria Manu Kapakini. 1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Arona Williams' tabled amendment to clause 5, section 123C3B, replacing